I have a question for you. Can AI technology ever truly replace us? This is a question that's been on everybody's minds since it's developing so fast. You see, in recent times, our reliance on technology has only been going up. My screen time is like 10 hours a day, my attention span has been reduced to half a second because of YouTube Shorts, and I use ChatGPT to write almost anything nowadays. You didn't hear that last part. And in 2023, we all know how AI is making huge progress, which makes me wonder, how far can it actually go? Psycho-Pass is an anime about just that, a world where people have integrated completely with AI. For those of you who haven't watched the show, it's about a society that has developed a super advanced AI called the Sybil system, a world where science has finally unlocked the key to the human heart. How the Sybil system works is that it analyzes your biometric data, and through this, it's able to read your subconscious mind, knowing you better than you know yourself. And by unlocking this black box of the subconscious mind, it's able to determine your best suited job, what makes you happy, and perhaps, most interestingly, your criminal tendencies. See, just like in real life, AI has changed many industries, but the one difference is that we in real life haven't seen AI being used in the justice system yet. And what makes this show so interesting is how it presents us with the idea of AI and ethics. The Sybil system can tell if you're about to commit a crime before it happens by reading your subconscious. By doing this, the crime in society, in their world, has dropped nearly to zero, and it's become much more of a peaceful place to live. Now think about it. What if AI can decide who's a criminal by reading their mind? This way we can determine who's a criminal and stop a crime before it ever happens. Wouldn't that be amazing? However, Psycho-Pass says that it's not so simple, and today I wanted to analyze one scene in particular which perfectly highlights this idea. And the scene is the first confrontation between our main villain Makishima and Officer Akane. Spoilers up ahead till episode 11, so if you haven't watched it, go check it out. It's fun, I promise. So, to catch you up to speed, this is after Kogami had a shootout with the old man with the dogs to save Akane's friend Yuki. However, Makishima finally reveals himself and drags Yuki with him to begin his escape. Akane finds out about this and chases after Makishima. When she finally catches up to him, Makishima presents Officer Akane with a chance to talk, saying that it's what any officer would do to stall for time. Akane obliges and they begin to chat. We uncover Makishima's goals as a villain. He explains that he wants to witness the beauty of the human soul, but says he can't do that under the Sybil system. Akane then retorts that he's acting all high and mighty for a simple criminal, to which Makishima asks what crimes she's referring to. He explains that science has finally unlocked the key to the human heart. By analyzing their biometric data, the Sybil system can determine the human subconscious, and in turn can determine if someone's a criminal. However, he points out that they have left out the human will in that assessment, and wonders what criteria Akane is using to determine if he's a criminal. This brings me back to the main question. We are always looking for a universal ethical framework, one that decides if any action is truly right or wrong. And if AI can do a better job at predicting crimes and deciding who's a criminal, well, what's the harm in letting it decide for us? After all, when humans decide, it's often influenced by many factors such as emotions and inherent bias, all of which can be completely subconscious. If AI eliminates this aspect and presents us with a more objective standard of deciding what's morally right, then shouldn't we just follow it? Makishima argues that even if the Sybil system is more objective in administering justice, it's ultimately meaningless because the system doesn't account for people's free will. Let me explain. One of Makishima's core beliefs is that people only have value when they act according to their own free will, and by extension, the acts that they perform are only moral if they act freely. This is very similar to the philosophy that Immanuel Kant cooked up back in the 18th century. Both Makishima and Kant believed the same thing, the core idea that actions are only moral if the agent does it out of their own free will. And why is free will so important in determining what's right and what's wrong? Well, think about it for a second. For example, you're running a store selling cosplays, I don't know, and there's a customer that comes up who looks like he doesn't know much about the local currency. Now, you can choose to shortchange the customer to make more money, but choose not to because you're afraid that if the customer realizes, word might spread and your business might go under. In this case, would you consider your actions of not wanting to shortchange the customer a moral action? Chances are not really. You're only not shortchanging the customer because you're afraid of getting found out, and therefore your actions can't really be considered moral. The idea of free will is important because if someone is forced to do the right thing, then it's not really their choice to be a good person. Even if that end result is something good, the fact that the person themselves did not make the choice makes the entire act meaningless. And this is what exactly Makishima argues. He argues that the judgments made by the officers are decided for them based on the Sybil system, and since those acts are not of the agent's free will, they cannot be considered moral. The officers, like everyone else living under the Sybil system, is only moral because of the fear of being punished by that system. They avoid all sorts of things that can cloud their mental state because they're ultimately afraid of getting flagged and end up in prison or rehab. Makishima tries to prove a point throughout the series. If people were good only because they fear punishment, then does that mean people are truly evil people who want to do evil deeds? He tries to find this out by giving people opportunities to test their will against the Sybil system. He does this all to prove that people's actions, their individual person, and their existence have some sort of value. He wants to see the beauty of the human soul. And this is where he presents Akane with the same choice. Makishima threatens to kill Yuki in front of Akane with a shotgun and gives her an ultimatum. He says that the Dominator can't judge him and says that if Akane wants to stop him, she must shoot him with the shotgun. As Makishima raises the knife to kill Yuki, Akane checks him with the Dominator and sees that his crime coefficient is less than 100. Akane is confused and says that she can't kill him. Makishima sees Akane's faith in the Sybil system and asks if she truly thinks he's an upstanding citizen. Then he proves Akane wrong in front of her own eyes by slashing Yuki's back with his knife. Akane hears her friend's cries for help and once again points the Dominator at him, only to find that it's still unable to judge him as a criminal. Finally, having seen the contradiction, Akane finally doubts the Sybil system and asks why it's unable to judge him. Makishima cruelly says that he doesn't know why, and he's been like this ever since he was a kid. He speculates that the reason why he can't be judged is because all the vitals in his bodies are signaling to him that what he's doing is the right thing. Perhaps with this line, he's mocking the flaws of the Sybil system that only bases justice on the human heart and not their free will. He says that if anyone, the only people who'd be able to judge him are those who are capable of killing based on their own free will. This continues more and more, and finally Akane panics as Makishima brutally cuts Yuki. Despite this, his crime coefficient continues to drop. In a moment of desperation, Akane fires her 2 shots, the sound echoing through the room. She drops her gun and realizes that she's missed both her shots. In a desperate plea, she looks at Makishima and begs him not to kill Yuki. But Makishima only looks at her with disappointment. He raises the knife, and in a last-ditch effort, Akane picks up the Dominator. But in the greatest twist of irony, Makishima's crime coefficient reads 0, as he brutally sliced open Yuki's neck. Here, Akane believes that the right thing to do is obviously to kill Makishima. She has seen his actions with her own eyes and deems him, by her own criteria of justice, as a criminal. Akane is actually contrasted with someone like Officer Yin. meaning that unlike Officer Gin, Akane does not blindly trust the Sybil system. And we see this throughout the series. Akane has demonstrated her ability to act of her own free will, one of which is that she chooses her job of being an officer even though she had the choice to choose any path that she wanted. The other is when she decided that shooting the victim in the first episode was wrong and stopped Kogami from doing so. Her actions up to this point were done in a way of her own free will. However, they were more or less in line with the Sybil system. Makishima, however, presents her with a direct contradiction, a decision that could not be solved by obeying the Sybil system. And why Akane hesitates is understandable, not only from an empathy standpoint, but also from a moral standpoint too. She hesitates to kill Makishima because she believes that the act of killing is generally deemed as morally wrong, even if the other person is a criminal. See, I believe Akane is the perfect representation of Kant's moral law. Kant says that for an action to be right, it has to be a universal law. In other words, if killing a criminal to save a friend were to become a universal law, it would mean that anyone in a similar situation would be allowed or even required to kill another person to save someone they care about. However, if everybody followed this principle, it would lead to a society where individuals have the right to kill whenever they believed it serves their interests. This would ultimately result in a chaotic and dangerous world with no respect for human life. And throughout this ultimatum, we also get to see Akane's struggle. With newfound free will, every action she takes has a consequence that she must bear. It's no longer the Sybil system's decision, but her very own to end someone's life, which is why she hesitates to do so. And under this circumstance, we see that Akane makes the perfect moral decision according to our definition. She ignores the consequences, or rather disregards them, and decides under her own free will that she will not kill another person, as that would be a contradiction to Kant's universal law. She makes the perfect, the most morally right decision, but is traumatized by her own choice. The choice to let her friend die. And perhaps this is the burden of free will.